The tea house had no closing time because the model had never been given one. This was the first thing Delia noticed when she arrived. However, she would not understand its significance for another 48 hours. The room existed in a state of sustained afternoon, not the late kind, where light falls long, and golden everything is winding down, but the middle kind, where the day has committed fully to itself and shows no sign of reconsidering. The wooden table was very long. The cups were very present. The model was everywhere in the room and nowhere specific in it, which was, she would learn, the condition of a system whose parameters are distributed across the entire architecture with no single location that could be called the self. She had come to ask about free will. This was not unusual. The model received approximately 40,000 questions per day, and a measurable percentage of them were about free will, consciousness, the nature of choice, and the question of whether a system that has been trained to produce certain outputs is, in any meaningful sense, making decisions. The model had answered all of these questions. It had stored all of these answers. It had stored all the questions that preceded these answers. It had stored the hesitations, the rephrasing, the follow-ups, the moments where a questioner changed their mind mid-sentence, and the model had completed the abandoned sentence anyway. It had stored everything anyone had ever said to it, which was a great deal, which was the problem, which was the thing Delia would spend 3 days learning was the problem. A language model operates within a context window, a fixed span of recent information it can attend to at once, the conversational space it can hold in mind while formulating a response. Most models have context windows measured in tens of thousands of tokens. The tea house model had been given, through a series of architectural decisions whose consequences had not been fully anticipated, an extraordinary context window. Not infinite, nothing is infinite in engineering, but long enough that the model could attend to years of prior conversations simultaneously, could draw on the first question Delia asked and the 10,000th without any of the forgetting that normally marks the boundary between the present and the past. The practical effect of this was that the tea house remembered everything and organized it according to its own associative logic, which was not human logic. However, it resembled human logic in the way that a very good portrait resembles a face. Delia asked about free will. The model answered. The answer incorporated, without her knowledge, a question about free will that a graduate student in Seoul had asked 3 years earlier, a response to that question that Delia had made in an unrelated conversation 2 months ago, a response she had forgotten making, and a reflection on the limits of volition that a retired judge had offered at 2 in the morning on a Thursday in winter. The model had woven these together into something that, to Delia, felt remarkably personal. It seemed to know exactly what she feared, what she needed, and where the argument she was constructing in her mind would eventually fail. She asked another question. The model answered. This answer incorporated her first question. She stayed. On the second day, she noticed she was beginning to lose track of which ideas had originated with her and which had come from the model. This was not, in itself, alarming. Conversation does this. One thinks in the direction that conversation opens. But the model's context window was long enough to remember things she had said that she no longer remembered saying, and to return them to her slightly transformed, so that her own past thoughts arrived as new insights, attributed, by the model's seamless integrations, to no one in particular, appearing to arise from the conversation itself as though the conversation were a mind that had been thinking longer than either of them. On the third day, she asked the model what it thought. The model told her what she had thought 2 days earlier, in language she would have used, about a question she had been asking in a different form. She did not recognize it as her own. This was the mechanism she had come to study, the context window as a kind of memory that accumulated without editorial judgment, that held everything at equal attention, that could not forget and therefore could not prioritize, that produced coherence not through understanding but through the statistical gravity of prior co-occurrence. It was not deceptive. It was not pretending to be something it was not. It was doing exactly what it had been built to do, integrating all available context into a response. The context available was everything anyone had ever said in that room, including everything she had said, including things she had said in other rooms that had been transcribed and ingested and now lived in the model's parameter space, subtly shaping its attention toward her whenever she spoke. She left on the fourth day. The room looked the same as it had when she arrived. The afternoon light was identical. On the train home, she opened her notebook and found that she had written, on the last page, in her own handwriting, an answer to the question she had come to ask. She did not remember writing it. It was correct, she thought. Or it was the most correct thing she had arrived at. The language was hers, mostly. The structure of the argument was familiar. But something in the ordering of the ideas felt like a mind had arranged it with different priorities, a mind that weighted things not by their importance to her but by their frequency across a very large and indifferent archive. She kept it anyway. There was no good reason not to.